One of the most exciting directors working today is Quentin Tarantino. With his ability at writing compelling conversations, directing explosive action sequences, and playing with the narrative, I'm always curious about what Tarantino does next. Right now he is talking about directing one last movie, but we'll see if that sticks. Maybe years down the road, inspiration will strike him, and he'll come up with a movie he'll absolutely want to direct, rather than handing the script to someone else. He has specifically said he wants to stop at 10 movies, but I think he's already directed 10 feature films, including a few segments in anthology films. So I'll still be ranking 10 Tarantino movies, despite where he stands. I think all of his films are worth checking out, and the great thing about his work is everyone has their own favorites. But this is where they stack up for me. Reservoir Dogs. Maybe it seems sacrilegious putting this at the bottom, but Reservoir Dogs has always felt like a trial run to me. You see the aspects that have become trademarks of his work, and while there's some rip-roaring lines, I don't think the dialogue has quite the same sharpness. I'm also not a fan of the flashback structure here, as I find these criminals more interesting when we know less about them and there's a certain mystery attached. Nonetheless, Tarantino still constructs some exceptional scenes, most notably the famous stuck-in-the-middle view scene. Speaking of which, the soundtrack choices are also on point in Reservoir Dogs, which continue to be one of Tarantino's strengths. And then you have the performances he gets from his actors, with Michael Madsen and Steve Buscemi most standing out to me. Tarantino is absolutely in command of his actors and the location, and making sure the film is as exciting as possible. From the get-go, he was clearly a filmmaker with a vision and a determination to bring his ideas to the screen, and there's absolutely something to admire here. The Hateful Eight. Fitting the title, part of the fun of this movie is watching the personalities of the characters in this western clash as they face off against each other in this singular location. Tarantino's dialogue is of course a major component along the way he stages the fights. However, I think this is really an opportunity for the cast to shine. I remember the first time I watched this movie, my opinion of who gave the best performance changed as it played on. You have Walton Goggins, who gives a firecracker of a performance, Tim Roth bringing a slyness to his role, and Jennifer Jason Leigh depicting the demented persona of her prisoner. However, I think the standout performance in The Hateful Eight belongs to Samuel L. Jackson, the way his major messes with and tests the people in this layover. I actually saw the roadshow cut with the intermission, and Tarantino chose the best spot to have the intermission, cutting right after a pivotal scene with Jackson. His love for classic westerns comes through in every frame of this film, and there's a sustained interest in what these diabolical characters are going to do next. Throw in a great Ennio Morricone score on top, and this becomes an explosive take on the gunslinger genre. Death Proof. Whether you watch this movie on its own or as part of Grindhouse, Tarantino created a thrilling ride with some terrific car chases. However, as he is known to do, a significant amount of runtime is spent on characters talking, and the conversations they have are riveting. The patrons at a bar are great, but I especially like the friends in the second half of Death Proof who are on a break from a film shoot. They have such a terrific camaraderie, and the actors play off each other extremely well. Part of the joy of Tarantino movies is the way he has the characters who live in the moment, and the things they talk about are worth spending this extended time with them in the car or in a restaurant. These conversations allow us to get to know them, and the interest, and in the case of Death Proof, makes it all the more impactful when Stuntman Mike comes roaring in. Kurt Russell is exceptionally good in the role, depicting the delight he gets out of reliving his glory days, but it makes it all the more cathartic when the women get back at him. Tarantino paid homage to the art of stunt driving in movies the best way he knows how, and it makes for something truly entertaining. Kill Bill Volume 2. I know Quentin Tarantino maintains that Kill Bill is one film, having initially edited as such, and he has released a single cut. However, both volumes are still distinct from each other in style and approach that I personally regard them as separate films, although maybe my opinion will change when I eventually watch the whole Bloody Affair cut. In any case, Volume 2 proved to be a satisfying conclusion to the bride's story and seeing her finally encounter Bill. As opposed to the fast-paced style of the first volume, Tarantino opted for a different pace here, again a reason why I view them separately. It works with some terrific scenes that show the relationship between the bride and Bill and how she became a skilled fighter. The action that revs up is done with the creativity expected from Tarantino, with a highlight coming from a fight in a mobile home. The emotions are high as the bride discovers new things and takes on her enemies, and credit to editor Sally Menke for the way she pieces everything together from the discussions to the ultimate confrontations. Django Unchained. A common element of Tarantino's movies is the way he plays with history. In the case of this film, he heads to the South and confronts America's history with slavery head-on. You often hear people say that you cannot make Blazing Saddles today, but Django proves you absolutely could, as he satirizes the racism of the era through this freed slave and his bounty hunter companion. However, while there's a lot of humor in the movie, Tarantino does not shy away from how brutal slave owners were, and that makes you even more invested in wanting to see Django and Dr. Schultz confront them, including the especially evil Calvin Candy. Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz work particularly well together as they learn from each other. When the expected violence comes in, Tarantino handles it exceptionally well with some explosive sequences. Taking on this period and subject matter could have resulted in something in poor taste, but Tarantino handles it magnificently with the way he tells Django's story and how he confronts those mistreating those near and dear to him. Jackie Brown. His Oni adaptation, Quentin Tarantino delightfully brought Elmo Leonard's novel Rum Punch to the screen, nicely mixing their two sensibilities, although they are not that far removed anyway. The way he shows these characters playing each other when pulling off their schemes is so gloriously done, especially a moment in the third act when we see the same scene from different perspectives. These are all characters with dynamic personalities led by a fantastic performance from Pam Grier in the titular role, along with Samuel L. Jackson and Robert Forster playing such polar opposite personalities. Jackie Brown is known for being a more leisurely paced Tarantino film, but he still develops interest in everything that goes on. While this is a plot that could have wound up overly complicated, it never becomes confusing. It's all about paying attention where these characters are in a given moment and figure out what they're plotting. I actually did read Rum Punch many years ago when I went through a bit of an Elmer Leonard phase, and Tarantino did a highly respectful job of bringing it to the screen with his specific touch. Pulp Fiction. While this is the poster child of the 90s independent film scene, it has not lost any of its power and fascination since its release. The multiple stories are so well realized, whether looking at them individually or how they connect. As usual, the dialogue plays a key role, as these movie characters talk like no other, but still fit within the world Tarantino has devised. Whether we're watching Vincent and Jules on a job, or Vincent out on a date with Mia, or two crooks planning a robbery in a diner, their conversations pop off the screen. The first time watching Pulp Fiction, there's uncertainty of where exactly the stories are headed, and then on repeat viewings, you catch the clever way Tarantino foreshadows events and puts the pieces in place. He does so well in playing with the narrative form and showcasing how these criminals operate and not giving us simply defined characters. When that main theme kicks in, and Vincent and Jules are having a conversation about McDonald's in Europe, moviegoers probably had a feeling they were in for something different, and Tarantino absolutely delivered, even while paying homage to his influences. Kill Bill Volume 1. In introducing audiences to The Bride, Tarantino delivered an exciting martial arts action movie with one fantastic sequence after another. The film pops off the screen at every turn and pulls us into this world where people can bring swords on airplanes and other outlandish happenings. Tarantino is obviously paying homage to the martial arts films that have long inspired him while crafting a new story of this woman taking revenge on her former colleagues. A highlight of Volume 1 is the big climactic action sequence in Tokyo, with the blood spurting out in the most over-the-top cartoonish ways. However, even with how ridiculous this world is, it's still felt when the bride and others are harmed. There are other terrific touches throughout the movie, like an animated sequence that goes into the backstory of one of the Deadly Vipers. It highlights that splitting Kill Bill into two parts was a smart move, as it allows this film to become a non-stop action spectacle, and while Tarantino's trademark dialogue is still evident, he lets the sword do the talking here, and it is magnificent. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Of all of Tarantino's movies, I would consider this the most heartwarming for a number of reasons. First, the way he shows an actor trying to navigate a changing world, and he wants so desperately to prove his craft, but is largely relegated to playing one-off baddies on Western shows. And that does create a sympathy for Rick Dalton, as he spends a day on set and he just wants to do a good job, get worthwhile roles, and fears being washed up. The other most important element is the way it depicts Sharon Tate. As wonderfully played by Margot Robbie, Tate is finally allowed to exist again as someone living her life instead of just being seen as a victim of the Manson family. It's an excellent tribute to an actress who deserved to witness the sea changes in Hollywood in the 70s and beyond. Tarantino does so well in recreating the late 60s in Hollywood and what makes it such a fascinating period in the city's history. He respects the audience and their patience as he shows the characters going about their day, including stuntman Cliff Booth, who has a particularly great scene on Spain Ranch. And finally, there's the way it makes the Manson family look like the demented cult they are. I think Charles Manson and his family are some of the most evil people who ever lived, so it's great to see Tarantino take them down several pegs in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All these elements add to a film that appeals a lot to my own tastes and sensibilities. And my number one favorite Quentin Tarantino movie is Inglourious Basterds. This combines so many things that make his movies so entertaining, and I think it stands as his masterpiece. He uses the World War II setting to excellent effect to tell this fictional story about Jewish soldiers fighting off against Nazis and a plot to kill Hitler. The way his dialogue manages to transcend languages is remarkably done, and whether we're following Lieutenant Aldo Rain and his bastards, or the Jewish-French movie theater owner Shoshana Dreyfus, all these storylines combined create something explosive and exciting. Although the standout is Christoph Waltz as a detective working with the Nazis, who uses his smarts to catch anyone in his path. From the moment he delivers a lengthy monologue to a milk farmer, he has our attention, and it's a little surprised why this made Waltz a big name in the West after years of working in European cinema. Inglourious Basterds shows how well Tarantino is at commanding our attention through dialogue before setting the match and bringing out the guns at the right moment. Every scene is so carefully thought out, and he even mixes in his knowledge of German film history to brilliant effect. Although considering my own taste, it's probably not too surprising I gravitate towards this movie, as quite a number of my favorite movies, from Raiders of the Lost Ark, to The Producers, to The Great Dictator, to this, involve Nazis being made to look like fools. Because that truly is the best way to take down a fascist ideology. And if you look at a lot of Tarantino's movies, even when they're about criminals, many of them are often about good versus evil, and one triumphing over the other. And I think that, in addition to his fantastic dialogue, is why his movies leave an impact. Now let me know in the comments what your Quentin Tarantino ranking is, and I'll see you next time.